I'm Mara Whitman, and I found out about my sister's wedding from Instagram. Not a call, not a text, just a tagged photo. There she was, Jenna, in a white dress, barefoot on the sand, our parents behind her, smiling like I didn't exist. Naomi's voice cracked the silence like glass. Tell me you already knew. I didn't look up, just stared at the screen. My name wasn't mentioned. My presence wasn't missed. Only one thing was clear. I was never meant to see that photo. And if you think that's cold, just wait. Because what I found next wasn't just an invitation I never received. It was my name, forged on a document I never signed. A wedding I wasn't part of, was built on my signature. Before I tell you how everything unraveled, the lies, the recordings, the fallout at the altar, tell me in the comments, have you ever been erased by your own family and told it was love? And if you're watching this, Jenna, you should have known better than to use my name. Naomi's voice cut through the stillness of my living room like a knife. Mara, tell me you already knew. Please. I didn't look up from the glowing screen of my phone. The picture was still there. Jenna. In white. Beaming. Our parents behind her smiling like the past year never happened. Like I'd never existed. I didn't know, I said quietly. The words felt thick in my throat. I tapped the image open again. My thumb hovered over it, numb. A beach ceremony. Sunlight. Champagne flutes raised in midair. Laughter I could only hear in my head. Not because I was there, but because I'd heard it so many times before. Naomi's breath hissed. What the hell is this? They posted this before even telling you? They didn't post it. Jenna's friend tagged her. The rest of her profile is private. Naomi dropped her bag on the couch, arms crossed. Her heels tapped against the hardwood floor. Last year, you let her crash here for 2 months after Brandon dumped her. You paid her security deposit. You co-signed her freaking car, Mara. I know. She cried into your hoodie every night, and now she gets married without telling you? I finally looked away from the photo. The apartment around me was dim except for the orange glow of the desk lamp. Outside, the October wind whispered past my window like it was trying not to disturb me. The shadows made my apartment feel smaller tonight. Walls leaning in, ceiling just a little lower. Naomi sat beside me, her voice softer. You okay? I didn't answer right away. My thumb kept sliding across the screen, back and forth, like maybe another post would appear. One that included me. One that acknowledged that I existed. But there was nothing. I don't think I'm surprised, I said finally. Naomi frowned. You should be furious. I think I'm too tired to be furious. I placed the phone face down and leaned back. The silence between us was the only honest sound in the room. There was a picture frame on the shelf across from me. Me and Jenna at Navy Pier 3 years ago. Before Brandon. Before our parents started calling less. Before I stopped being invited to Sunday dinners. My smile in the photo looked too hopeful now. It made me ache. I remembered how Jenna used to call me first. For everything. A bad date, a work fight, a recipe. Then the calls stopped. And when they did come, it was always about her. Her problems, her plans, her new ring. Naomi got up and walked to the kitchen. The kettle clicked on. You're not going to let this go, are you? I don't know, I said honestly. What am I supposed to do? Crash it? They don't deserve to have you there, but they don't deserve your silence either. I didn't respond. My eyes wandered to the unopened stack of mail on the console by the door. Something glinted in the corner of a white envelope. Gold foil. Thick cardstock. I stood up and slowly peeled the envelope open. Mara? Naomi called from the kitchen. It was a wedding invitation. Formal, embossed. Jenna and Brandon. I swallowed hard. My name was printed in looping cursive. Miss Mara Whitman. Guest. A small insert card fluttered out. Should you wish to attend. Not, we would be honored. Not, we hope you can join us. Just that. a conditional afterthought. I stared at the card like it had insulted me to my face. My fingers tightened and I ripped it clean in two. The sound was louder than it should have been, like a final note. Naomi stood in the doorway, tea mug forgotten. What now? I walked to my laptop, sat down, and opened a new browser tab. The soft glow lit up my face as I typed flights to Bali. "I take my vacation," I said, voice steady. For real this time. She ripped the RSVP card in half, then books a flight to Bali. I didn't come to paradise to escape. I came to forget what home felt like. The breeze drifting through the open shutters smelled of wet earth and lemongrass. Outside my window, the rice terraces of Ubud shimmered in the early morning light, layer upon layer of quiet green. But my thoughts, no matter how far I'd flown, hadn't made it out of Chicago. The sheets tangled around my legs were damp with sweat. I hadn't really slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it again. Jenna's voice from years ago in the dark corner of our shared childhood bedroom. "You're the only one who gets me." I used to believe that. Now I wondered if she ever meant it, or if she'd always known how to use me as a safety net. Maybe both could be true. My phone lay face down on the nightstand, but it kept buzzing against the wood like a trapped insect. I hesitated, then flipped it over. 57 unread messages. None from Jenna, none from my parents. Just group texts from old high school friends who'd been invited. Photos, memes, a boomerang of clinking glasses with the caption number sign Whitman Wedding Weekend. I turned the phone off and shoved it under a pillow. I didn't want their joy in my pocket. Not today. A soft knock tapped against the villa door. Before I could answer, it creaked open and Mrs. Ayu stepped in, holding a tray with 2 ceramic cups and a small teapot. Her long gray braid hung down her back, and she smiled with a gentleness that made my chest ache. "You couldn't sleep?" she said, not asked. I shook my head. "Jet lag," I lied. She set the tray on the carved wood table by the balcony. "This tea helps." She poured, then added, "But you don't need to explain. Sometimes the heart is louder than the body." I gave a polite smile and joined her outside. The air was cooler than I expected, and the mist curled around the trees in the valley like a shawl. "You came here for something," she said. "What is it?" I sipped the tea. It was floral and slightly bitter. "Peace," I answered, surprising myself with the honesty. Mrs. Ayu studied me, then nodded slowly. "Then you must learn to put down what is not yours to carry. Pain that belongs to others, even family, is still not your burden." I looked out at the view, eyes unfocused. Sometimes I think I was born to carry it, like they trained me for it. She chuckled, not unkindly. "Then it's time to unlearn." When she left, the silence returned, but softer now, like a blanket instead of a cage. I opened my laptop, half out of habit. No work emails. I'd set my out-of-office message. I wasn't sure if I'd ever go back. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. I didn't mean to open the folder labeled Jay and Me, but it happened anyway. Old messages, screenshots, pictures. Her texts filled with heart emojis and frantic apologies from years ago. Me, always responding too quickly, always available. Had I mistaken dependence for love? A notification banner slid across my screen. "Naomi Harris, one new message." I clicked. "Naomi, something feels off about Brandon. You need to see this." The air around me shifted. A tightness crawled across my chest. I clicked the attachment, an audio file labeled WednesdayEvening.mp3. Jenna's voice came through, low and trembling. "If anything happens, ask Mara." Attached is a voice memo with Jenna's voice. Frightened, whispering, "If anything happens, ask Mara. You don't ignore a cry for help, especially when it comes from the person who shut you out." The cafe was open air, shaded by thick palms and woven bamboo overhangs. A fan rotated lazily overhead, stirring the humid air just enough to make it breathable. My Americano sat untouched beside my laptop, the ice melting into weak coffee. My fingers tapped against the ceramic cup, but my mind wasn't here. Not in Bali. Not really. Naomi's name lit up my phone again. Naomi. Another voice memo. He's laughing. You need to hear this. I braced myself and hit play. Brandon's voice oozed through the speaker. Smug. Drawling. A prenup? Sure, baby. Sign whatever makes you feel safe. Doesn't mean it'll mean a damn thing later. She won't even read it, trust me. Silence followed, except for the distant background sounds of clinking glasses and someone chuckling nervously. Then Jenna's voice, faint and small. Brandon, that's not funny. The recording ended. I stared at the screen for a long moment, trying to decide whether my nausea was from the humidity or the audio. Naomi messaged again. Naomi, you remember that property thing you helped Jenna with, right? 2 years ago? Co-signing something? The pieces clicked before I wanted them to. I closed the chat app and opened my Google Drive. Buried deep in my archived emails was a scanned document. A joint property application from when Jenna was terrified her credit score wouldn't qualify. I had co-signed. She promised she'd refinance once she got a raise. She never did. I remembered Brandon showing up 6 months later. Something about the timing had always bugged me, but I'd let it slide. For Jenna's sake. I pulled up Illinois business records next. My Wi-Fi was spotty, the page lagging, but eventually I found 2 companies listed under Brandon's name. One dissolved, one under review, and then a third under a different address with a matching email domain. His filings were inconsistent, a red flag if you'd ever worked in finance, which, unfortunately for Brandon, I had. My phone buzzed again. Naomi. Dropbox. Look now. She pasted a link. The cafe around me blurred into the background. I clicked. There it was. A PDF file, hastily titled SEPI Prop Agree Final. I opened it. Separation of Property Agreement. Dated 3 days before the wedding. My name was on it. Not just mentioned. Signed. My signature. Slanted. Neat. Distinctively mine. But I hadn't signed anything for Jenna in over a year. I hadn't seen her in months. The lines of text swam on the screen, legal jargon twisted into something cold and efficient. It outlined that in the event of divorce, certain properties, including the apartment I'd helped her acquire, would be protected under Mara Whitman's witness attestation. But I had never witnessed anything. Someone had copied my signature. Not scanned. Not pasted. Recreated. A slow, chilling realization settled in my chest. They were setting up for something far bigger. And somehow, I was already part of it. I exhaled shakily. Then I hit record on my voice memos and whispered, "If anything happens, ask Brandon." They pushed me out of their lives, but they kept using my name. The video call connected with a tinny chime, and Ethan Graham's face appeared, grainy under the dim lamplight of what looked like a New York apartment. His tie was loose, sleeves rolled, but his eyes were sharp as ever. He'd always been the kind of lawyer who didn't blink when things got messy. Naomi's thumbnail hovered in the corner of the screen, her expression tight. "Ethan, thanks for taking this. I know it's late." Ethan nodded. "You've got about 15 minutes before I jump into another call, so shoot." I leaned in. "We sent you a document, a separation of property agreement. It has my name on it, my signature, but I didn't sign it." Ethan clicked something on his end. "Got it. Downloaded the PDF. Give me a sec." We waited in tense silence as he scanned. The fan above me buzzed faintly. I could hear a motorbike rumble somewhere outside the villa, far down the road. Finally, Ethan leaned closer to the camera. "You're right to be concerned. This signature is off. Not just stylistically, but structurally. The curve on your M is too rounded. The W in Whitman isn't consistent with your older documents." I exhaled, part relief, part dread. "So it's forged." "Legally? That's what it looks like." He paused. "But you'll need a formal analysis to make it hold in court." Naomi chimed in. "We don't need court yet. We need leverage, fast. Ethan's voice lowered. If this agreement was used to reroute assets, especially involving shared property and family, you could have a fraud case. But tread carefully. If Brandon's this sloppy, he might be desperate. Desperate. The word made my skin prickle. I glanced at Naomi. She looked tense, shoulders high. There's more, she said softly. Jenna's not okay. She barely answers calls. Her posts are all filtered, scripted. She used to overshare. Now? Nothing. I nodded. That voice memo. The prenup. It's not just shady, as it's dangerous. Ethan folded his arms. If you want me to look deeper, I can, but you'll have to come stateside. No judge is going to care about a Dropbox file from Bali. I stared at the screen, the green pixelated edges of his frame. My hand was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from clarity. I had been sitting here for days, absorbing the blow, trying to distance myself. But they hadn't really let me go. They'd used my name like a pawn. And Jenna, whatever mistakes she'd made, was still in it. I'm flying back, I said. Not to crash the wedding, to pull the curtain. Naomi let out a slow breath. Good. Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me. Mara, be careful. If what you're suspecting is true, Brandon's not just manipulative. He's strategic. I know. Just before we ended the call, my phone lit up. Jenna, I messed up. Can we talk? Please? I didn't even have time to process the message when Naomi's phone began ringing in the corner of the call. She looked down, startled. It's Brandon. I didn't hesitate. Give it to me. She handed it over. Hello, I said. The line crackled. Then his voice, smooth and sharp, reslid through. Well, I thought you were in Bali, Mara. Coming home feels less like returning, and more like preparing for war. The plane wheels touched down on Chicago's wet tarmac with a groan that echoed in my chest. Through the oval window, the skyline stood half-shrouded in low clouds, as if the city itself wasn't ready to see me. I wasn't sure I was ready to see it either. My suitcase thudded onto the carousel. Nestled between layers of linen and silence was a small photo frame I hadn't looked at since packing. Me and Jenna, age 8, in matching red velvet dresses, our hands clasped, cheeks squished together in the frame. It had always sat on my old dresser. I wasn't sure why I brought it. Maybe as evidence that once we were more than this. The air outside O'Hare was colder than I expected. Autumn had turned bitter in my absence. Naomi was waiting by the curb in her dented Subaru, coffee in hand, eyes scanning the sidewalk. You look like hell, she said when I climbed in. Jet lag and betrayal, I replied. Goes well with caffeine. She didn't laugh. Neither did I. Jenna's apartment was 10 minutes away, nestled in a quiet brick building with ivy crawling up one side. The stairs creaked under our feet. I hadn't been here in over a year. Naomi waited in the car. I knocked once, then again. Silence. Finally, the door cracked open. Jenna stood there, barefoot, eyes red, face thinner than I remembered. She looked both relieved and terrified to see me. I didn't know who else to call, she whispered. I stepped inside. The living room was spotless in that obsessive way that hinted at chaos underneath. A candle burned on the windowsill, the kind Mom used to light on holidays. It didn't smell like home anymore. I'm sorry, she blurted before I could speak. About the wedding, about everything. I didn't respond. Not yet. She sat down on the edge of the couch, fidgeting with a throw pillow. Brandon changed after we got engaged. It started with small things. He wanted joint accounts, said it was just simpler. Then he didn't want me talking to you. Said you'd poison things. Said you were jealous. That part didn't hurt. Not as much as it should have. I signed things I didn't understand, she continued. He said it was normal, that couples do this all the time. You didn't read the documents? I asked. She shook her head. He said lawyers would just confuse me. I didn't think he'd fake your signature. I never agreed to that. I studied her face. There was shame there. And something else. Fear. Before I could press further, the front door clicked open. Brandon. He walked in like he owned the place. Sleeves rolled, tie loose, expression casually smug. His eyes flicked from Jenna to me. "Well," he said, "if it isn't the prodigal sister. Or should I say, amateur detective?" I stood, spine straight. "You've been busy forging things, Brandon. Hope you're better at damage control." He smiled, unbothered. "Don't be so dramatic, Mara. You were always the emotional one, remember?" I crossed my arms. I'm willing to let it go. No police, no court. If, and only if, you return every document you touched. To Jenna, today. His smile sharpened. "You think you can bluff your way through this?" "No," I said. "I'm not bluffing." I picked up my bag and headed for the door. He followed. "You don't have anything." I turned. "I have everything," I said. "Let's see who breaks first." The wedding was still days away, but the lies were unraveling faster than the ribbon on her bouquet. The rain tapped steadily against the apartment windows as I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, Jenna's old MacBook warming my thighs. The place still smelled like vanilla and tea tree oil, her favorites. But the air was taut with a silence neither of us dared to acknowledge. Jenna was in the shower, trying to stay upright. I was on her couch, trying to stay calm. I clicked through her iCloud backups like I was peeling back skin. Layer after layer, folder after folder. Photos, notes, voice memos. Some files were innocuous. Wedding inspiration boards, bakery quotes, dress fittings. Others made my stomach twist. A document caught my eye. POA_FINAL_0925.pdf. I opened it. The words hit me like a slap. Power of attorney. Executed less than 3 weeks ago. Signed by Jenna. Granted to Brandon Ellis. Ethan's voice was flat over the speakerphone. It gives him full financial control. Real estate transactions, investments, even the authority to sign legal documents on her behalf. I felt my breath snag in my throat. Did she even read this? Ethan sighed. Hard to say, but the language is airtight. Can we revoke it? Sure, if she's willing, if she's not under duress. I closed the file, heart hammering. My mind returned to something Jenna had said over lunch a year ago. This wedding is everything I've dreamed of. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now it sounded more like a defense mechanism. I switched to voice memos. Most were harmless. Reminders to pick up dry cleaning, notes for her vows, little snippets like, call florist, fix centerpieces. But one file, partially deleted but recoverable, played without warning. Brandon's voice came through, loud and seething. If you ruin this, I'll make sure your sister pays. There was a pause. Jenna's voice, smaller, tighter, whispered something I couldn't catch. I replayed it 3 times. Still couldn't make out the words. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I stared at the screen, stunned. It wasn't just controlling behavior. It was premeditated. Threats, financial entrapment. And my name, always my name, used like a shield or a weapon, depending on his mood. I reached for my notebook to jot down a list of files to duplicate for Ethan, and that's when I felt the weight behind me. I turned. Jenna stood in the hallway, towel wrapped around her, hair dripping, eyes wide. She had heard. Her lip trembled. You weren't supposed to find that. My voice was low. How long has he been threatening you? She shook her head slowly, as if answering a question I hadn't yet asked. And that's when I saw it. A flicker of guilt in her eyes. Not fear, not confusion. Guilt. And for the first time since I'd landed, I wasn't sure if Jenna was only a victim, or if she'd become something else entirely. You don't declare war with fireworks. You do it with silence and strategy. I sat across from Ethan in his glass-walled office high above Michigan Avenue. The skyline stretched behind him, stark against a cloudy October sky. He slid a printed copy of the letter across the table, crisp, sharp, and brutal in its precision. Notice of intent to pursue civil action for forgery and financial misrepresentation, filed on my behalf, delivered electronically to Brandon Ellis at 9:02 a.m. It wasn't a lawsuit. Not yet. Just a warning shot. And if we did it right, it would make more noise than an air horn in a chapel. Ethan tapped his pen. He'll call someone. Maybe not you, but someone? I nodded. He'll call Jenna. We didn't say what we were both thinking. She might cover for him. Again. By noon, the storm had started. I was in a cab downtown when Jenna texted. Jenna. He's furious. Keeps asking if I talked to you. I said no. I hesitated before responding. She was still shaking from what she'd heard the night before. But part of me still didn't trust her completely. That flicker of guilt hadn't left my mind. Me. Good. Don't engage. Just stay calm. That afternoon, I walked past the Langston Hotel ballroom, the wedding venue, where a cluster of florists were unpacking crates of white orchids. Inside, I caught a glimpse of someone in a headset directing staff with overly cheerful urgency. It was the wedding planner, Penelope Hartford. Sleek, efficient, always in heels too high for practicality. She caught sight of me and narrowed her eyes, then smiled, the kind of smile that made you feel like she knew a secret you didn't. Well, if it isn't the mysterious sister, she said sweetly. I heard you might be coming back. I raised an eyebrow. News travels fast. Penelope leaned in conspiratorially. Let's just say, people notice when grooms take mysterious calls and brides burst into tears at cake tastings. She winked and moved on. By 3 p.m., Naomi messaged, he's trying to scrub the cloud. Files are disappearing one by one. But it was too late. I had already backed them all up that morning. Voice memos, emails, PDFs, calendar invites. Every breadcrumb he thought he could sweep away was already tucked neatly in a secure folder. Duplicated, time-stamped, and sent to Ethan. Twice. Then came the final piece. An angry call from a blocked number. I didn't answer. Silence was part of the plan. Later that evening, Ethan called me back. His voice, usually composed, carried a rare edge of satisfaction. He's scared. That's our opening. Weddings bring people together. Lies tear them apart. I sat in a rideshare car across from the Langston Hotel, watching well-dressed guests filter into the grand dining hall through a marble vestibule strung with fairy lights. My window was cracked just enough to hear the faint hum of laughter and clinking glasses. Every part of me wanted to be invisible, which wasn't difficult. I wasn't on the guest list. Naomi was. She walked in confidently, arm in arm with a tech guy she barely knew, their relationship arranged last minute for one purpose. Get her inside. Naomi, 2:17 p.m. I'm at table 6, near the cake. Parents just walked in. I scrolled through Instagram out of habit, expecting to see filtered perfection. Instead, a story from the event's planner's assistant popped up. A slow pan across the banquet room, elegant centerpieces, the happy couple holding hands. My heart tightened. Elaine, my mother, stood nearby, smiling just wide enough for the camera. In the next clip, she leaned toward a woman I didn't recognize, champagne glass in hand. Naomi sent a follow-up message. Naomi, 2:21 p.m. Overheard Elaine. She said, "It's better without Mara here. No tension." I clenched my phone so hard the case creaked. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. I gave him a quick practice smile. Just waiting for someone. More messages came. Naomi, 2:24 p.m. Richard's bragging about Brandon's business instincts. Says he's tightening Jenna's portfolio. Like she's a startup. Of course. My father always adored men who talked numbers like weapons. And Brandon was fluent. I refreshed the event hashtag on Instagram. A filtered slideshow was already being shared. Photos from childhood, awkward teen years, summer vacations. I tapped through each one until my breath caught. A picture from Jenna's 13th birthday. The two of us in matching pink dresses, frosting on our noses, arms around each other. Only in this version, my face was blurred. Poorly. As if someone had hastily smudged it just enough to render me unrecognizable. Erased. I shut my phone and blinked hard. The buzzing returned. Jenna, come, but don't say anything yet. It was only 3 words, but they splintered something inside me. She knew. She had let this happen. But now maybe she didn't want to be alone in it. Before I could respond, Naomi messaged again. Naomi, 2:34 p.m. You're not the only one Brandon silenced. Jenna's not the first. I stared at the message, pulse racing. My thoughts jumped ahead. Who else? What else? The lies were deeper than I'd thought. And now I wasn't just fighting for Jenna. I was fighting for every woman Brandon had buried behind polished smiles and binding contracts. You can't control a narrative once the truth begins to whisper. The clink of mimosas and ceramic plates painted the usual brunch lullaby. But beneath the hum of laughter and strained small talk, I could feel it. The tension, taut and invisible like the final inch of thread before a stitch snaps. I stood just outside the terrace of the Langstons' garden suite, watching. Inside, Naomi was playing her part to perfection. She leaned in beside Brandon and his circle. Groomsmen, a few cousins, a bridesmaid or two who had always smiled too widely at him. A laugh escaped her lips, exaggerated and breezy as she reached for her purse. The phone slipped. Or rather, Naomi let it slip. It hit the floor with a clatter, and before anyone could react, it began to play. A voice memo. Loud, clear, and unmistakable. Brandon's voice, sharp with rage. If you ruin this, I'll make sure your sister pays. You think you're the victim? You're nothing without... Gasps rippled. A spoon clattered onto a saucer. Naomi fumbled, snatching the phone, tapping furiously like someone trying to stop a video of a cat pooping at a dinner party. Oh my God. Sorry. That was a podcast. I didn't mean... She babbled. But the damage was done. Brandon's smile didn't falter, not fully. But his eyes, they flared, narrowed, calculated. His jaw ticked once, twice. What kind of podcast is that? One of the groomsmen asked, more amused than suspicious. Experimental audio drama, Naomi said with a wink. Super niche. The group laughed awkwardly. Brandon didn't. That's when I walked in. I took my time approaching. Let them see me. Let him see me. Not hiding, not unsure. Naomi met my gaze for half a beat, then turned away as if nothing had happened. Brandon faced me with a rehearsed smirk. Didn't expect to see you here. I tilted my head. Really? I've heard your vows. I wonder if your lawyer has... His nostrils flared just enough. I didn't stay long. Just long enough for the whispers to grow legs and walk from table to table. By evening, Jenna's phone lit up with texts from bridesmaids. Is everything okay? Did you hear what Naomi played? Is it true? Brandon, of course, spun it. He told Jenna Naomi was unstable, that I was still bitter, that the family didn't need more drama. But later that night, in the dim hallway outside their shared suite, Naomi's recorder caught everything. Brandon's voice, lower now, but unmistakably venomous. If you mess this up, you'll end up like Chelsea. Jenna didn't respond, but I would. Before Jenna, there was Chelsea. Before Chelsea, there were whispers. Now they're roaring. The downtown library's archive floor was quiet, save for the occasional hum of an old scanner or the shuffle of someone too polite to type with volume. I sat hunched at a dusty terminal, the cursor blinking like a pulse as I clicked through cached blog posts preserved only by obsessive internet archivists. Chelsea Morrison, 2017. Her name had popped up on a real estate filing Ethan traced back to Brandon, co-owner for 3 months. Then, scrubbed. The blog started innocuously enough. Planning my wedding, vendor drama, but he says I'm overreacting. Then, I can't find the deposit I made for our venue. He says I must have imagined it. I didn't. He says I'm too emotional to handle the accounts. I'm signing things I haven't even read. He says it's faster this way. I wake up and don't recognize myself. I read until my eyes burned. Her final post from a month before her blog disappeared wasn't tagged or categorized, just a sentence in italics. He always uses their sisters first. My skin went cold. Find something? Ethan's voice murmured in from my earpiece. Yeah, I whispered. More than I wanted. I forwarded the link. Naomi pinged me a minute later with an article from 2018. A brief mention of Chelsea Morrison withdrawing from public events, citing emotional exhaustion. Her family had moved states. I pushed back from the terminal. My fingers trembled, not from fear, but from fury. Back at Jenna's apartment, she was curled on the edge of the couch, arms wrapped around her knees like armor. She looked up when I entered, as if she already knew what I'd found. You knew, I said softly. About Chelsea? Her face crumpled. Not all of it. I found a folder once. He said it was just business stuff, old drama. But you didn't ask questions. I was scared, and he made me feel like I owed him. I handed her a printout. The deed to a villa in Santorini, signed weeks ago. My name was on it. Again. You signed with me? I asked, voice low. He said if we used your name, the tax bracket would be better, that you wouldn't notice. I didn't know what else to do. You didn't think I'd care? My voice cracked. After what he's already done with my name? Jenna wiped her face, then looked at me, ashamed. I didn't think I had a choice. I stood there for a moment, the weight of every betrayal settling like ash in my lungs. Then I exhaled slowly. We're not just going to stop the wedding, I said. We're going to stop him. My phone buzzed. A new email, no subject, no body, just a reply to the message I'd sent an hour ago. Chelsea Morrison, meet me before it's too late. Chelsea didn't show up to talk. She showed up with documents. She slid into the booth across from me, a soft clink of ceramic as she placed her tea down without meeting my eyes. Her long coat was damp from the misty Chicago morning, and the corners of a manila folder peeked from her oversized tote like the sharp edge of a secret. We hadn't hugged. There was no small talk. The air was too thick with things unsaid. I don't do this kind of thing, she said finally, voice like paper left out in the rain. But after you contacted me, I knew I couldn't stay quiet. She pulled out a folded legal form and laid it on the table like a playing card. Restraining order, she said. Filed May 2021. Retracted June 2021. Guess who convinced me to withdraw? I didn't answer. The top of the form bore her name, Chelsea Morrison, and below, Brandon Ellis. I scanned the document. The language was cold, clinical, emotional coercion, threats of reputational damage, misuse of shared financial assets. Why did you retract? I asked. He promised to disappear. Said he'd never contact me again. Said if I just let it go, he wouldn't leak what he knew about my medical records. Her voice caught. I was in therapy. I had a breakdown. He found the notes. She reached into her bag again, this time pulling out a slim digital recorder. With a trembling thumb, she pressed play. You think you can walk away? I'll make sure your next employer reads your whole psychiatric file. I have friends at your licensing board, Chelsea. I shut my eyes for a second. The tone, the smug cadence, it was all too familiar. He's not just manipulative, she said. He's systematic. He builds his control through paperwork, favors, threats, always just inside the law until he's not. I nodded, barely able to keep still. And you said he's used other names? She handed me a printed list. I skimmed. Brennan Ellis filed taxes in Nevada 2019. Braden Elst, shell company in Panama. B. Ellis Holdings LLC, dissolved after fraud investigation. He launders his identity like shirts, she muttered. Always some new front. Jenna doesn't even know about the Nevada incident. He convinced her it was an old college name. My phone buzzed. Ethan's text. IRS. Crosscheck confirms alias match. He's flagged. Another text came in seconds later. Naomi. We're almost set. Rehearsal dinner is being live-streamed by the planner's intern. Just say when. I turned to Chelsea. We leak this. Not just to Jenna, but publicly. Naomi has access to the stream. She bit her lip. You're sure Jenna's ready to see it all? I'm not sure she ever will be, I said. But she deserves the truth more than the illusion. Chelsea leaned forward, lowering her voice. He's already moved fast. Registered the Santorini property, the honeymoon estate, under your name. If the wedding goes through, you're on the deed, Mara. You're liable. I froze. The trap wasn't just emotional now. It was financial. Legal. He's not planning a honeymoon, I whispered. He's planning an escape route. Chelsea nodded grimly. And he's using your identity to fund it. My pulse pounded. Everything was accelerating, a train gaining speed on warped tracks. This wasn't just about stopping a wedding. It was about dismantling a machine, before it crushed someone else. The ceremony began with music and murmurs. It ended with static and silence. The wedding hall gleamed like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Strings of soft white lights coiled along the rafters. Floral arrangements bloomed at every turn, and a string quartet played something so delicate it barely registered over the hum of whispered anticipation. Brandon stood at the altar like a man who had already won, chin lifted, hands folded loosely in front of him. His tuxedo was tailored to perfection, his smile carefully measured. Around him, rows of guests leaned in with their phones, capturing what they thought would be a perfect union. Naomi moved unnoticed among the caterers and staff, camera slung over one shoulder, headset clipped to her blazer like any other videographer. No one questioned her as she plugged a single black wire into the control panel near the DJ booth. She met eyes with the planner, gave a quick nod. 2 minutes. In a private apartment across town, I watched the live stream on my laptop, every muscle locked in place. Chelsea sat beside me, breath shallow. Ethan's voice came through the speakerphone, low and even. On your mark. The music faded as Jenna stepped forward. She looked beautiful. No denying that. But there was a stiffness in her smile, something hollow in the way her eyes avoided Brandon's. She held her bouquet like a shield. Dearly beloved, the officiant began, we are gathered here. And then the static started. At first, just a flicker of distortion. The screen on the hall's main projector glitched once, twice, then cut to black. Brandon turned, irritated. A few guests murmured. Then the voice came through. If you mess this up, you'll end up like Chelsea. A wave of sound crashed through the speakers. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The officiant froze mid-sentence. Brandon's jaw twitched. More audio followed. Clips Naomi had surgically chosen. I don't need her trust. I need her assets. She's just like her sister, emotional, easy to control. Then, the projector flared to life. Chelsea's face appeared. Clear, steady. My name is Chelsea Morrison. I was once engaged to Brandon Ellis. What you're about to see is the timeline of our engagement and how it ended. A slideshow began. Photos, dates, legal documents, bank statements, even portions of restraining orders. Narrated in Chelsea's own voice, it wove a meticulous web, one Brandon could no longer pretend didn't exist. He lunged toward the AV booth, shouting at the technician, at Naomi, at anyone within reach. But the sound had already taken hold. The lies he built were unraveling, thread by thread in front of every guest, every phone camera, every judgmental gaze. Jenna stood frozen. Her bouquet fell. Elaine gasped audibly, reaching for Richard's arm, who stared ahead like stone. The illusion they'd carefully curated, the perfect wedding, the perfect man, was bleeding out in public. Brandon finally seized a mic. "None of this is true. These are doctored." Jenna stepped forward, took the mic from his hand. Her voice trembled, but not with fear. "Brandon, did you ever love me? Or just the money?" The hall went silent. Not even a breath dared to break the moment. Brandon didn't answer. He couldn't. He didn't run. He froze. And that was worse. The moment the last note of Chelsea's voice died from the speakers, the wedding hall transformed. It wasn't chaos. It was worse than chaos. It was silence. And stares. Hundreds of eyes turning on Brandon Ellis as if he were a roach caught scurrying across a white linen tablecloth. He didn't bolt, didn't shout, just stood there, slack-jawed and motionless, the mic still dangling in his right hand. That frozen expression, half pride, half disbelief, seemed to stretch for minutes, though it lasted mere seconds. Jenna dropped the bouquet entirely this time. The projector screen turned black again. Naomi had already slipped out through the side door. Her part was done. I was already outside, standing across the street, heart hammering, trying to stay out of view, but unable to tear my eyes away. Chelsea stood next to me, arms crossed tightly, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. From within the hall, we could hear murmurs swelling. Not just the guests, but former co-workers, ex-clients, family friends. People whispering things like, "I always thought the NDA was weird," and "He made Melissa close her accounts when they moved in together." The facade Brandon built with smoke and signatures was crumbling, and people were putting the puzzle pieces together out loud. Elaine's voice rose above the din, clear and pointed. "What did you use our name for?" Richard stood beside her, lips pressed in a thin line, like he was doing the math on how much of his reputation had been collateral damage. Brandon didn't answer them either. His silence was now louder than any denial he could offer. Then, the flash of blue and red, 2 plainclothes officers entered the venue, calm but firm. They weren't here to arrest him. Not yet. But they had papers. Ethan had moved faster than I thought possible. "Mr. Ellis," one said, holding out the envelope. "You've been served." Brandon finally moved, only to laugh once, sharp and humorless, before snatching the summons from the officer's hand. His eyes darted from guest to guest, then to Jenna. She didn't flinch. He turned to her. "You're going to regret this." She blinked, then reached into her clutch and pulled out the marriage license, folded neatly in thirds. Without a word, she tore it down the middle. Then again. The pieces fluttered to the ground like falling petals. "I already did," she whispered. She turned on her heel and walked out the front doors. I stepped forward without thinking, catching her as her knees almost buckled. She gripped my forearm, and together we walked down the steps, out into the street, away from what could have been the end of her life. Behind us, the crowd slowly filtered out. Elaine stood at the threshold, watching us with unreadable eyes. She didn't say anything until we were nearly in the rideshare Naomi had called ahead. "Mara." We both turned. Elaine's voice trembled, but not from weakness. We may have chosen the wrong daughter to ignore. The aftermath isn't always quiet. Sometimes it begs for clarity. Sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains of my apartment, landing in soft patches across the kitchen table. Jenna was stirring oat milk into her coffee like she hadn't just detonated her own life 3 days ago. Chelsea, opposite her, was slicing into a croissant like it might bleed secrets. I hadn't said much. The clink of utensils and the hum of street noise outside had carried the weight of our silence. "I don't know how to start," Jenna finally said, not looking at me. "But I'm going to try anyway." I waited. She glanced up, eyes swollen from nights of no sleep. Maybe guilt. "I didn't protect you. Not when Brandon started asking for documents. Not when Mom and Dad told me to leave you out. I was scared of what I'd lose. I thought, if I kept quiet, it would all be fine." she exhaled. It wasn't. I set my mug down. And yet, it's still you sitting at my table. She nodded. Because you didn't slam the door. Chelsea leaned back in her chair, arms crossed but eyes soft. That's the difference. Abusers isolate. Survivors, we rebuild. Jenna turned to her. You really think we're survivors? I think we survived him, Chelsea said. And now we get to choose what that means. There was a long pause, filled only with the scent of toast and the soft hum of traffic down on Ashland Avenue. I had the property rights reversed, Jenna said, voice barely above a whisper. The ones Brandon tricked you into co-signing. I had my attorney file the correction this morning. I didn't thank her, but I nodded. That was enough. Chelsea reached into her bag and pulled out a folded paper. I'm relaunching my blog, this time with legal backing and a network of therapists. We're calling it The Second Vow, for women who said yes and then had to say no. My chest caught on something. Pride, maybe. Or grief. Or both. That's good, I said quietly. That's really good. My phone buzzed. Voicemail. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. Elaine. I stared at it, then pressed play on speaker. Mara, it's your mother. I know I probably don't have the right to say this, not after everything. But I was wrong. I see that now. You were never the emotional one. You were the strong one. I just didn't want to admit how much we needed you, because it meant admitting we'd failed. If you ever want to talk... I deleted it before she could finish. Chelsea didn't flinch. Jenna did. You don't have to forgive her, Chelsea said, just because she asked. I'm not angry, I replied. I just don't owe her my peace. The room settled again. No tension, just relief. Then the phone rang again. This time, Ethan. I picked up. Hey, you sitting down? I'm always sitting lately. That honeymoon estate? He said. It's finalized. Turns out Brandon did exactly what Chelsea warned. He used your name, forged your authorization, but the final title came through to you. What? You're the legal owner, Mara. All 3.2 acres of it. I wasn't part of the wedding. I became the chapter after it. The new office still smelled of plaster and promise. White walls, minimal decor, a single framed print above the reception desk that read, Legacy isn't what you're given, it's what you reclaim. I hadn't picked it for subtlety. Outside, the late November light stretched thin over downtown Chicago, crisp and clean like the start of something that didn't owe anyone an apology. Jenna walked in with 2 coffees and a folder tucked under her arm. You ready? I raised an eyebrow. For the deal or the press? Both, she grinned, but especially the headlines. Sure enough, the screen behind the front desk played the morning segment. Brandon Ellis ordered to pay $1.7 million in damages following wedding day exposure. Below that, former fiancé Chelsea Morrison launches national advocacy platform. Chelsea had texted me a photo just before her talk at a women's conference. Bold red lips, no notes in hand, and the caption, no vows, just truth. I couldn't help smiling. Naomi burst in a moment later with her usual flair, wearing sunglasses indoors and carrying a box of branded keychains. Your logo just got approved, she announced, tossing one to me. It read, Whitman and Company, Realty. My name, my terms. Clients arriving in 20. Ethan chimed in from his laptop on the shared table. Final paperwork's clean. The estate's yours. They'll sign this afternoon. The estate. The words felt foreign even in my own mouth. The property Brandon once intended for his honeymoon. Now the site of my first solo listing. I had stripped the place down to its bones. The marble stayed, but the lies were gone. Jenna leaned against the counter. You sure you want to keep it? No, I said. I want to sell it. Turn the page, not decorate it. She nodded, understanding exactly what I meant without needing more words. We reviewed the documents. The buyers were a couple starting over after a messy divorce. Something poetic in that, I thought. Across the street, I caught a glimpse of someone ducking away as the news van approached. Elaine, and Richard, a step behind her. I didn't look twice. The door chimed. Clients. I shook hands, smiled, walked them through the contracts. Not once did I stumble. Not once did I apologize for being where I was. The closing signatures went on smoothly, initials etched with confidence, like punctuation to a story I had rewritten myself. After they left, the room was quiet again. I stood at the window, sipping the coffee Jenna brought. No flowers, no fanfare. Just the hum of my own life moving forward, unburdened. I wasn't just excluded from the wedding. I was spared from the wreckage. The truth didn't erupt in a scream. It surfaced in 1,000 quiet cuts, each one unraveling the facade Brandon built. What began as exile turned into a reckoning, where silence became strength and evidence became justice. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But when it does, it silences every lie with clarity. No wall of manipulation stands forever against the steady tide of truth. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. Type 1 if you felt empowered, or 2 if you wanted more. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this.